Like, I actually like what you guys do. I watch it because I like to hear different
Stop it, go
opinions.
on.
No, I
Come
like
on.
to
We're not
listen
that
to
handsome.
different opinions and stuff, but I have no problem with you getting on and trying to advocate for like getting rid of things like no-fault divorce. Now, if you guys pass the law, like, I think you should have the complete right to do that, convince people, but passing the law is a very different thing.
Well, you'd have to pass a law if you're talking about a law, right? You're talking about,
yeah,
right?
but I think it's much different to try to get people to not get divorced or advocate for that position.
Well, look, I think everybody, unless you're the most hardened, radical feminist maniac, you don't like divorce, right? You're not saying we want more divorce.
But I think people should have the freedom to
right,
get
so
divorced.
you're merely talking about the right. And so I guess my question then is, put aside legal divorce for cause. What is gained by no-fault divorce? What's the good of that?
Oh, there's a bunch of good when it comes to no-fault divorce. Previously, when we had fault divorce, people would literally have to like lie or commit vices in order to be able to get divorced. So whether it was like...
Why don't they just not get divorced, though, if there's no fault?
The problem is if they decide to like not get divorced, usually that leads to like higher rates of unhappiness. It leads to people having like more tension within their marriage. There is tension.
I don't know. I'm not convinced of that.
Well, yeah.
Again, because I think, happiness has declined for everybody, and especially for women over the time that we've had these laws.
But we can look at people who, reportedly stay in marriages where they're unhappy and like the long-term effects of that, even like psychologically, health-wise. We can look at abusive relationships, situationships where the woman feels like she can't leave, even in an era of no-fault divorce.
That would be fault, right? That's not no-fault divorce.
Yeah,
that's like my husband punched me in the face.
The problem with fault divorce, right, is that you're already instituting like a burden of proof onto like these abuse victims that would basically prolong the process of them getting away from their abusive partner, right?
You could separate and you could move out, the same night.
So basically you're saying that you're okay with advocating for a system where they're basically not married in all the ways that matter, but just not legally?
I don't know what matters.
Well, they're not living together. They're not being intimate together. Their children are in basically separate homes because you're saying the woman can leave, but she cannot
I'm opposed
divorce.
to divorce, but we're speaking specifically now about no-fault divorce, because we're probably not going to agree on divorce broadly, but we might at least agree that no-fault divorce is very, very bad. Because you're saying, well, if one is not able to have a no-fault divorce, then they might have to stick with that spouse that they don't like that much, or the spouse got kind of fat and I don't like him anymore, whatever. But first of all, it's definitely better for the kids, in as much as the studies are reliable on this. Kids who grow up in a home of a mother and a father bound together in marriage do better across every single criterion. But furthermore, you're neglecting the negative aspects of divorce. I mean, when people do get divorced, and then if they have kids, and God forbid they get divorced, then if you introduce a stepfather into that relationship, the odds that those kids are abused or sexually assaulted go through the roof. The odds that and actually, at a more basic level, because we could rattle off the statistics all day, at the basic level, we recognize that the marriage is the fundamental political unit. The liberals say the individual is the fundamental political unit, but I think that's bunk. I think it's the family, because political means multiple people,
But just to go on the data really quick, I mean, they're staying in a household with conflict is worse than...
But they'll have the conflict in divorce. I mean, this is divorce is
no.
If
It's better for, like, yes, you're right. But also when you factor in education and socioeconomic status, a lot of that dissipates. So what's happening usually is that poor people are more likely. So it's all jumbled up. But also,
poor people are less likely to get married in the first place and more likely to have kids at a wedding.
But being a child in a home with conflict between the parents is worse than having...
Right, but then why isn't the answer resolve the conflict?
Because people can't. We're human beings. You're the one who's talking about human nature.
Yeah,
human nature. We're clearly not successful at staying with one person forever.
We have been at a much higher rates in the recent past. So, unless we're suggesting that no one can progress, that no one can improve their behavior, then I think we can get better at that. And I think part of the reason why divorce rates spiked is because the law encouraged divorce rates to spike. And because, to give the red pill guys their due, because family courts have been horribly unjust to men, and because we have a liberal idol in our society of radical individualism that says, who cares what happens to my spouse or my kids?
When in recent history were we really good as a human species on lifelong, healthy bonds? Like, serial monogamy
in the
seems
United
to be
States?
what we're good. I don't, but this thing, you don't know just because of someone staying together. Like, there's a lot of people who had parents that stayed together that are all sorts of messed up because the parents fought, there was alcoholism in the house. There's all types of things.
They're all bad things
just
that
people
can happen.
staying together isn't isn't a good metric for childhood well-being.
Well, it's a good predictor of outcomes, but I totally grant to you that, there are bad marriages. I just think if the law is then going to intervene, the way the law has intervened is by dissolving the marriages and creating all sorts of incentives to get divorced and to not get married in the first place. But if the law is going to intervene because of all these problems, why wouldn't the law intervene to make marriage more sustainable, to encourage marriage?
The law really isn't intervening per se. People are choosing whether they want to apply this law to their life or not. So people are choosing that they want to get divorced or choosing if they want to work things out. The difference is that now you have a choice on whether you think the person you're with is actually somebody you can continue having a sustainable relationship with. But if the answer is no, then
to quote Simone de Beauvoir, that famous feminist, if you give people a brand new choice, if you give people a preferable choice, given their social circumstances, they might just take it.
And women fare off this idea that women are, like, to fight back on the red pill, that women are just incentivized to divorce. Women fare off far worse financially after divorce. They're way more likely to seek government assistance, be in poverty.
Totally.
They're less likely to repartner. So this idea that women are just running to the divorce court to get money is just not true.
Well, no, they are divorcing at much higher rates. That's undeniable. And I'm totally with you. Divorce is horrible for women. So sometimes feminists make the argument that I think perhaps we were getting to a little earlier, the argument that you just contradicted, which is, divorce is so good for women. It's a wonderful choice. They really need to have this choice. It makes their lives better. No, it doesn't. Basically, all the time, it makes their lives much worse, to say nothing of the ways that it harms their children.
Well,
and harms society against the fundamental political unit.
What it's basically saying is that if a person is willing to take all these worst outcomes, like economically, socially, whatever, imagine how bad that relationship must have been.
Or imagine how
that a woman
diluted
decided, like, hey, you know what? Instead of like trying to continue this, it is so toxic and so unhealthy that this is a better alternative.
Or they have been deluded by a lot of propaganda over the years, which is that divorce is good.
You seem very sane. I'm sure you and your wife have really great ways of communicating and resolving your conflicts. Do you know how crazy people are? Like,
they can be.
Yeah, like crazy. To say that that's going to work for everybody and everybody should just stay in this when people are not emotionally even mature enough.
Look, I certainly style myself Prince Charming, so I'm glad to hear that we all agree. But you're right. Maybe people engage in more vicious and harmful behaviors. So I guess my question is, if we agree that certain cultural practices can make people behave better, and certain cultural practices can make people behave worse, shouldn't we be doing everything we can to make people behave better? And that's what we did in the classical political arrangement of society, right? You know, the basic point of politics is do good and avoid evil. Then, under liberalism, you had a new point of society. The new point of society was to just expand individual autonomy maximally, on the, I think, false supposition that would make people happier. And we've had a couple hundred years now, and we've seen how it's played out, and it hasn't played out very well at all. So why don't we go back to the one that worked for all of human history?
So, one, do you think that's possible or going to happen? And two, would you then be in favor, because education, female education, seems to be a big predictor of, one, we're the only ones whose marriage rates are not falling, they're going up, and we're less likely to get divorced. So do you then, would you advise women, instead of getting married really young and living this traditional lifestyle, to maybe go get educated
the best predictor of women staying married and flourishing and having lots of kids and being happy and not even trying to get divorced, it's not education, though education is some predictor of that.
Big one.
It's religion.
Yeah, you're true, but you can't make people. We're just becoming less religious as a society. This thing you guys have, where let's turn the clock back. Let's turn the clock back.
I don't want to turn any clocks back. I just want to turn our heads back to reason.
You can't make
and reason
people
is founded
believe in
logic,
something.
Who is God?
Yeah, exactly. But the logic and the reason and the age of information, a lot of people now have access to it, and they're going, actually, this kind of seems like bullshit. And they can't. You can't make.
No, I don't think that's why people have become irreligious. I don't think it's because they've all gotten much better educated and read a lot more books.
They read Christopher Hitchens. I agree with you.
No, I think they heard a Christopher Hitchens video once, and which is
it's undeniable that more and more people are identifying as non-religious, that this is just the trend that it's going in. And I don't know how much, as great as the Daily Wire is, how much you guys are going to be able to reverse that. So maybe we should look at how we can move forward with the society we have, instead of trying to turn the clock back in a way that
But it's not a clock. It's not a clock. We're not going. I'm not making a time machine. I'm just saying that there's truth and there's falsehood, and we are embracing a lot of falsehood in society, and that's leading to a lot of ugliness and a lot of depravity. And if we want less of all that stuff, and we want more like good, true, and beautiful things, maybe we should use our reason to recognize really basic things like God exists. I'm not telling you you've got to come to traditional Latin Mass tomorrow. You could wait until Sunday. But at the very least, we should recognize, hey guys, some things are better than others, right? The minute you grant that some things are better than others, ultimately you have to grant that there is a maximal good, a summum bonum, who is God, right? We should recognize, hey guys, effects follow causes. And if you go back on the list of causes far enough, there's going to be an uncaused cause, who is God. And you
There's
can't
really great
Hold on.
arguments against this.
Jasmine,
like-
before I